Hello everybody, my name is James Downey and I'm a nutritionist at CP Feeds. Thanks for tuning into this podcast. Back about 2 months ago, I was in this very field doing a podcast on having a plan for harvesting your alfalfa. That was after a very tough winter and spring on the alfalfa fields, and this field had a lot of bare spots. We came back in and no-tilled an alfalfa seed, and now this is the second cutting. And you can see it's fairly spotty. I'm sure you've had some fields like this on second crop as well. Now I want to talk today about the cost of raising alfalfa. As we work through 2020 and low forage supplies, I think it's really important that we get an idea what is the cost per ton of this alfalfa. As a nutritionist, I like to put together feed budgets for my clients, and when we're looking at purchase feed costs, that gives us a good idea of monthly bills we're sending out. But I really think we need to look at total ration costs so we can evaluate alfalfa versus other forages or versus other feed sources as well. Today I want to talk big picture about establishing alfalfa, harvesting alfalfa, and storing alfalfa haylage to get at least an idea of what that's actually costing you. I'd really urge you to sit down with your team and calculate these costs for yourself as well. One good place to find a lot of tools for this is on the UW-Madison Team Forage website. You can look that up, and right there on the right side of it there's weekly Upper Midwest hay market reports. That's a really good place to find information. The other thing I think it's really crucial that farmers do, there's a lot of farmers buying feed off the field from other farmers this year. I think it's really important that you set a price beforehand and that you even go as far as writing up a contract. That way every party is on the same page and there's no misconceptions and everybody's happy at the end of the day. Let's look at some big picture costs of raising alfalfa. This number is going to vary widely from farm to farm, and it really depends on what you plant and how you manage your alfalfa fields. For example, just some ballpark numbers of seed can vary between $5 and $6 per pound on the maybe conventional varieties. And on your higher end varieties such as low lignin alfalfa or maybe even Harv Extra, that can be between $12 and $13 per pound. Seeding rate is going to vary quite a bit on every farm, but using an average of 16 pounds per acre, that can be anywhere between $100 and $200 just for seeding costs. Then we also need to look at fertilizer. We need to be realistic about what alfalfa is taking out of the soil and using. So a good number would be between $50 and $65 per acre of what your fertilizer cost would be every year. The last piece of that is field work. And I estimate here it's about $60 per acre to work it, crush it, and plant it on my farm. But make sure to do some figuring on your own farm as well. It's really tough when you own your own equipment and have it in the shed. It's hard to break that cost down and know what it's actually costing you per acre. A good place to find some numbers would be the custom rate guide. The most recent one is 2017 and USDA put it out. You can also find that online as well. Now let's talk about harvesting. Harvesting costs are going to vary widely. In this case, a dairy is paying a custom harvester to make this haylage, and they're going to be able to get an idea of their total bill divided by the tons of haylage that they bring home. If you're doing it yourself, it's much more difficult to figure that out. I encourage you to at least run a few loads over the scale and take some dry matters when you're harvesting so you can get an idea of what your harvest cost actually is and what your yield actually is as well. And then let's look at their storage. Storage structures are going to vary widely from farm to farm, of course. And we also know we're going to lose some dry matter in storage. Even on the best farms, just a couple percent, but it can be north of 10% pretty easy if we have some poor management or some poor wet feed coming in. So we really need to figure out how much we're going to lose on the way out. Lastly, if you have electronic feed software or other means that you can measure your refusals and figure out what your tons are that you brought in to what is actually fed in the bunks, you'll notice there's going to be a couple percentage loss for shrink as well. So at the end of the day, a lot of times in our ration software, we'll use as fed $100 per ton for haylage. This is just an estimate that we like to use, but we really don't take into account the moisture and also the quality of that haylage. Truthfully, $100 a ton as fed is probably very low, and it's probably costing you a lot more than that. I'd really urge you to look at figuring out what your alfalfa is costing you per ton so you can decide if there's other better feed sources out there. The other thing that's costing a lot of money is leaving those stands in production that are pretty poor because your harvest cost is extremely high for not a lot of yield. Now I want to talk a little bit about the risk of establishing that alfalfa. This field was actually a fall or summer seeded last year, and so I like that option because you can do it in your rotation. Maybe you can get some manure out or put it in after wheat and kind of get a few more crops on the same land. But the risk of that is that it can, die really easily in the winter and you can miss out. Another positive on fall seeded alfalfa is that you kind of take that lower yielding seeding year out of the mix, because your next year of alfalfa, let's say we put it in last fall, this year should be a really good yield, 4 to 5 tons dry matter. If we planted in the spring with a nurse crop, say peas and oats or something up here, in this area, we will probably have, maybe 2 ton dry matter that first year. And if you have a short rotation of 3 years, you probably have, maybe 12 ton dry matter off the field, versus a fall seeded you could have 14 or 15 ton dry matter off the field in that same 3-year span. And of course, it just comes down to how the years are and how the winters go and how hard it is on the alfalfa. There's several co-workers of mine who have farms that have basically just silage or maybe some alternative forage for their forage source, and then they purchase all their feed in. And in that case, I think it's really important to get an idea of what alfalfa is actually costing you, so that us as nutritionists and you as the dairymen can decide if it's the best buy or if there are other sources out there. At the end of the day, alfalfa is an excellent feed and it's a cornerstone of many rations here in Northeast Wisconsin. That said, I do urge you to figure out what your cost per ton is alfalfa, so that we can figure out as a team how much your total ration feed cost is. If you have more questions, feel free to reach out to any CP nutritionist and we can work through this with you. Thank you for watching.